Happy to be joined by Connor O'Gara from Saturday Down South. Connor, we are 1 week away from SEC Media Days in Atlanta. How stoked are you right now?
I'm excited. I'm looking forward to seeing you and our buddy Ty Richardson. It'll be a great time in Atlanta. I'm at kind of a weird place, though, just as somebody who returned from vacation. I returned late Saturday, and now I'm trying to get caught up again before, obviously, the week of festivities in Atlanta. But it's going to be great, man. It's going to be a lot of talk about non-football topics, which is probably going to drive some people nuts. But we're at a very interesting place right now in the sport, and I think that's going to dominate the conversation.
Oh, it definitely will. I think that we're going to get, 90% talked about what the future of college football holds instead, maybe 10% or less of what we'll actually see on the field. So before we get into what we're probably going to get 90% of, let's talk about maybe some of that 10% of what we're going to see actually on the field this season around the SEC. What are some of the biggest storylines and some of the biggest things you're interested in finding out from coaches and from players?
I'm interested to kind of see the quarterback dynamic in the SEC. I think quarterback play in the SEC is at a very rare place. Maybe 2013 is the last example I can think of where it feels like quarterback play coming into a season is this strong. But I think there's going to be a lot of really good and healthy debate about quarterbacks in this league because there's probably maybe seven different teams in the SEC who feel like they have a top 10 quarterback in all of college football. And that's going to make for great conversation. And I think it's going to be a lot of healthy debate that goes on, but also returning the Heisman Trophy winner and Bryce Young is a big part of that. But, as Arkansas fans know, when you have a guy at quarterback, it just kind of changes your overall outlook of what you feel like your team is capable of. I know Kentucky fans, I know Tennessee fans, even South Carolina fans are feeling a lot more optimistic than they have as of late going into a season because they have their guy, and they don't necessarily have to worry about that. I expect to see a lot of those guys at SEC Media Days. There's not really much of a debate about who's going to be the starting quarterback like there was last year at so many of those different places. So just getting to sit down and talk about actual football with those guys should be something that I'm looking forward to, and just kind of feeling like what exactly is their vibe going into the season. We always see the guys who come out with these sky-high expectations. I bet some of them will probably add to that with their showings in Atlanta, but I think we're going to have, in terms of just the football discussion, a lot of it will be driven by quarterbacks in the SEC this year.
And with some of those quarterbacks, I've seen a lot of lists because we are in the dog days of summer. It is list season along with Mount Rushmore season, whatever other kind of season that a lot of people in the sporting business like to do because we don't actually have games to talk about right now. And I've seen a lot of quarterback ranking lists, Connor, and I've seen KJ anywhere from 2 to down to like 7 or 8. Where would he be right now on your list?
I got him at number 3. I got him at 3 behind Hendon Hooker at number 2, and obviously Bryce Young is at number 1. If you don't have Bryce Young at number 1, I don't know. Just take a walk, take a lap, come back with a take that actually makes sense. But yeah, to me, that's where the list really starts is at number 2. And a lot of people look at what Hendon Hooker did last year upon further review, and they're like, "Whoa." Didn't realize this guy had a 31-3 TDI-NT ratio. He was extremely well throwing the deep ball and has room for improvement as well. And obviously he is a plus runner for sure. So, you look at all those things, and I would give him a little bit of a nod ahead of KJ just because I don't necessarily think that his success last year was as tied to one person. He had a great connection with Cedric Tillman, who in my opinion is the best returning receiver in the SEC. But I would give him a slight nod for that. I have more questions about the passing game with KJ. We saw the reliance on Treylon Burks last year and how important that was. We know that they're still going to run the football a lot. KJ is still going to be a big part of the running game. But can they develop those weapons? That's probably the only thing that's going to hold him back from being a first or, I guess, in this case, a second team all-SEC quarterback going into the year. I would expect Hendon Hooker to have that second team spot.
Now, for the main thing that's going to drive most of SEC Media Days and has driven most of talk radio, sports sites, and just fueled the conversation in college football, realignment. And do you expect, Greg Sankey to just come out and address it and kind of put everybody's mind at ease, or do you think he's going to be vague and kind of leave that door and window open for the next couple through SEC media days leading up to the season?
I would say more so the latter. I would say he'll leave the door open. He's not gonna necessarily shut that door closed, because you don't necessarily know what kind of phone calls you're going to get. I mean, how crazy would it be if, we're finding out in the middle of SEC media days, Notre Dame has made a decision and wants to join the SEC. I mean, I don't necessarily think that's going to happen, but at the same time, nobody a week before SEC media days would have possibly been able to predict that Texas and Oklahoma were going to join the SEC by week's end. We get that bombshell report in the middle of SEC media days from the Houston Chronicle, which just kind of threw everybody for a loop. So to say that anything is definitive at this point feels a bit naive, but I expect Greg Sankey to leave that door open, and he should. He should. He absolutely should. You have to be able to react in this day and age in college football. If all of a sudden we find out that Oregon and Washington are going to the Big Ten, or Notre Dame is going to the Big Ten, and we find out that the Big Ten is going to continue to grow and get to 20, I would expect the SEC to be right there. Having said that, I would expect the SEC to make that next step before the Big Ten does. But, we're going to continue to talk about realignment because it's fascinating. There are so many moving pieces right now in college football, and it feels like a lot of the cards that are being played, Greg Sankey is holding them in his hands. So I think he'll be asked about that, and he'll probably have to come up with new ways to sort of deflect or at least defer a definitive answer to that question.
Mm-hmm. Now, with him leaving that door open, and we know that it's not set where it is. I don't think anybody truly believes that OU and Texas are the last two people to join the SEC, at least, in the next 10 odd number of years. And then we might get around to, I think most of us can agree that there's going to be a few more teams. So, Connor, you're in Birmingham. You're in Greg Sankey's shoes. Who do you want to walk through that door that he's leaving open?
I mean, Notre Dame would be ideal from a TV standpoint. Given the way that Notre Dame has played against SEC competition in games that actually matter, I would say that'd be a nice little flex for the SEC as well. I don't necessarily expect that to happen. If I'm betting on Notre Dame joining a conference, it would be the Big Ten. But I think that Florida State, Miami, Clemson, UNC are the four most interesting. And, to the people who would say, why would you want UNC in a conference? Well, let's not forget the SEC is trying to establish a bit more stability on the basketball court as well, and that'd be a big part of it. And they would add a lot of value from that standpoint. So I think that there are like that would be the short list in terms of the realistic candidates. And for everybody saying that, you can't have multiple teams from in the state of Florida and the SEC, and to that I would say, all right, then tell me why the Big 12 existed in its capacity, or Southwest Conference existed in its capacity with several schools from the state of Texas, the very talent-rich recruiting state of Texas, for as long as it did. So to me, I think, Florida might have some reservations about that, much like we heard about the reservations that A&M had about Texas joining the SEC, but at the same time, I don't think that would necessarily be a deal breaker. So, that'd be the four I'd go with: Florida State, Miami, Clemson, and UNC.
Yeah, and you bring up UNC, and I think they're interesting, especially, like you said, with the college basketball angle. But it feels weird to say that there could be a day where UNC and Duke aren't playing, regular conference basketball or conference football. And the idea, and it was thrown out there so much, especially way before Texas and OU, of these partnerships between universities of OU would never go anywhere without Oklahoma State. The governor, all these politicians, they never allow it. They never allow for one to leave the other one behind. And now it could be a possibility that UNC kind of leaves Duke behind. Are the days of quote unquote partnerships with inside of a state and we're going to do what's best for all instead of just us thrown out the window, and now it's just, hey, survival of the fittest, every man for themselves?
Money talks, man. Yeah. Money talks above all else. That's why the alliance was so unbelievably short-lived. I think that's the biggest motivator in all these things. I don't think you're missing out on potentially doubling your revenue just because you want to lock arms with another school. I think those days are over. Geography's dead. Alliances are dead. The way of college sports as we know them, it's in the rearview mirror. There are a lot of people who will say the 2010s might have been their favorite era of college football, and ending it with the season that LSU had there's certainly something to be said for that, because this product is going to look really different. And not just from a conference realignment standpoint, but if we get pay for play in the latter part of the decade, if we have the transfer portal wherein these guys are coveting so much money on the open market, and you're having guys that are, millionaires before they ever show up on campus, it just kind of changes the way that we view the sport. And some will resist that and say, you know what, that's just not for me. They'll find something else to do with their fall Saturdays. And others will say, all right, this is the new world that we're living in. It's up to us to make the best of it. I'll probably be in the latter, given the way that things have played out and the way that I've felt about them so far. But I think that we're at a very interesting point in our sports history, and the pieces are going to continue to change before our eyes.
Mm-hmm. We're talking with Connor O'Gara from Saturday Down South. Two more things with you before I have to let you go. Connor, how big is the Jimbo versus Saban conversation and, NIL and this quote-unquote idea of legally paying for players going to be a topic of? Because, you go back, 2.5 weeks ago, that was what everybody was ready for. Everybody was ready for Saban and Jimbo to put on their boxing gloves to meet in Atlanta and duke it out and have Lane Kiffin basically be color commentating on the whole situation. How big of an issue is that going to be now?
We'll hear more from other coaches about that than we will them themselves. And by that, I just mean maybe an occasional offhanded joke from Eli Drinkowitz or something. Mm-hmm. That's about it. Other than that, I don't really expect to see fireworks. I think that they're trying to move past that. The public reprimand, I think, sort of put the kibosh on that, as we saw at the SEC meetings. They're not really willing to keep going back and forth. I think what needed to be said from each of their standpoints was said. So why continue to add to that? I don't think they're going to continue to dig their hole any deeper than it currently is. And not to say that they're both in a hole or anything like that, but just in terms of the way that things were communicated. There was a reason that they both had that sort of backlash from Greg Sankey. A&M, as we found out from that report from On3, A&M wanted to get Nick Saban suspended or a fine, and then Jimbo Fisher comes out with the response that he has, and Greg Sankey's like, well, you just did basically the same exact thing, so I'm going to give you both the reprimand. So I think kind of the old double technical solution to the way that played out will probably put an end to any sort of drama with the Jimbo Fisher-Nick Saban dynamic.
Last thing for you, Connor, before we let you go. I get into Atlanta Sunday at about 10 a.m., so I can't even check into the hotel for 5 hours. If you're in that situation, what's the best way to kill 5 hours in Atlanta? I've never spent a lot of time in the ATL.
Braves playing on Sunday?
I don't know. Oh, I'd have to check. That is a great idea.
If the Braves have an afternoon game on Sunday, that's what you should be doing. I know they're playing. They got a home series against the Angels the week after that, but I'd say head up to Buckhead, tour the College Football Hall of Fame, where we're going to be having SCBD days at. It's a really cool venue. Atlanta's got plenty of great spots, man. You could definitely kill some time there. CNN building. I don't know. There's a lot. There's Chick-fil-A's all over the place. that can kill 2-3 hours. I don't know, man. There's plenty to do. I think you just got to get out there and do it.
Yeah, I don't think I'll fall short of different options. Well, Connor, I appreciate you joining us.
Partners at BetOnline continue to be the #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's Wimbledon Finals, Major League Baseball, the latest fighting news, and even next season's early NFL futures. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code BLEAV. That's BLEAV to get the bonus and get into the action. Bet online, where the game starts.